Nobody warned me about the pause. A moment so thin and silent it creased the air between what was mine and what was about to be taken. When I returned to my desk, two men were waiting, blazers tight across their shoulders, hands hovering above my laptop as if it could burn. My name, Sarah Collins, printed in block letters on a folder labeled termination, looked like a cruel joke. I watched them, my stomach locked, while my phone vibrated in my pocket, an alert reserved only for disasters. Not a text. Not an email. Raven Protocol, my system, sending one signal. Unauthorized access detected. My code was calling for help, but the only rescue I had was whatever courage hadn't dissolved. For 10 years, I hid every wound behind algorithms and caffeine. Now betrayal is logged and archived, stamped with the time they decided my work was better without me. They didn't see me reach for my coffee, for my purse, for anything except the drive taped under my chair. I walked out, but Raven stayed, waiting loyal ready. 3 weeks ago, everything felt routine. Night drowning the city outside, the stale hum of the office, the safety of routine, until tiny fractures surfaced, dull but persistent. Liam, my colleague and once confidant, asked for access to older prediction models, citing urgency with the upcoming quarterly review. The request came between long meetings and caffeine lines, veiled in compliments he once reserved only for late-night debugging sessions. I didn't question him. Not then. But a cold draft crept in during a late Friday when I caught a glimpse of Raven's dashboard projected in a glass-lined meeting room. My commented code scrolled across the screen. Lines written on sleepless nights, algorithms shaped by heartbreak and stubborn hope. 2 names repeated across the newly exported log files. Liam Harper and Ashley Crow. They stood shoulder to shoulder when no one else was left in the building. I watched from outside, invisible, my own badge suddenly heavy against my neck. The words proprietary framework replaced my signature in the system comments. The office chilled around me, swallowing any certainty that had survived my past year of rebuilding. After divorce, I poured every ache, every shred of determination into Raven. I thought I'd built something they couldn't touch. But that night, watching my work rebranded and sold from conference glass, I realized I'd given them everything needed to erase me. The tension grew in the weeks that followed. Instructions for new report formats came down, all aimed to streamline my contributions out of view. Liam stopped meeting my eyes. Ashley's emails dense with polite distance and legal fluff. Clients asked about our prediction engine, and every reference to me was omitted, replaced by hollow assurances about team innovation. My steps through the hallways grew slower, deliberately silent. I caught whispers, IPO rumors, new partnerships, the promise of a proprietary technology ready to change the industry. The creeping dread wasn't unfamiliar. Years of therapy taught me most betrayals start quietly. Raven, though, noticed first. The automated log showed failed privilege escalations, root-level script edits without authorization. Ashley's username popped up where it never should. Unusual commit activity, flagged in crimson in weekly admin emails that only I read. Each night I stayed later, searching for traces of compromise, evidence that the system was being stripped for parts. Each morning, I found new fragments, unreachable directories, missing documentation, locked out access. On Tuesday, the shift finished. HR called. Structuring transition. They phrased it as if I'd asked for this. No confrontation, no explanation, just the removal. My badge deactivated before I finished my coffee. I sat in my car, breath crystallizing against a steering wheel gone cold. Pain didn't come immediately. Just numbness. A hollow echo after 10 years of loyalty and sacrifice. No message from Liam. No apology from Ashley. Only Raven. A system built in my image, signaling betrayal through the digital air. I went home and didn't sleep, refreshing every log from a backup server they didn't know existed. The evidence accumulated. System forks, cloned prediction kernels, traces of my logic hastily rewritten to align with new ownership. I stared at the code as if my own story could be rewritten by someone else's ambition. But as the days unraveled, so did my resolve. Every instance of my erasure welded into a fury that felt more precise than grief. The tools of betrayal were data, silence, and legal paperwork. The tools of resistance would have to be mine. memory, logic, and whatever quiet power Raven still owed me. The cracks in my comm became lines in a battle plan. I was not gone, not yet. And Raven remembered everything. The email arrived on Friday at 4:47, clinical and devastating in its brevity. Organizational restructuring had rendered my position redundant, effective immediately. No phone call preceded it, no manager's rehearsed sympathy, just a digitized erasure signed by someone in HR I'd met twice in 5 years. I sat in the parking garage, engine off, staring at the screen until the words blurred into pixels. Anger hadn't surfaced yet, only a cold vacuum where certainty used to live. Then Raven sent another alert, this one from a backup server they didn't know existed. The log detailed everything. Escalated admin privileges under Liam's credentials, cloned prediction kernels, forged root signatures attempting to overwrite my authorship. They hadn't simply taken my job, they were systematically erasing my fingerprints from every algorithm, every data structure I'd built over a decade. I drove home on autopilot, hands gripping the wheel hard enough to ache. The condo felt too quiet, shadows pooling in corners I hadn't noticed before. I opened my laptop and accessed the hidden admin panel. The one I'd coded during sleepless nights after my divorce when work became the only anchor I trusted. Raven's heartbeat pulsed amber, not critical, but alert, watching for the next violation. The forensic trail unfolded across my screen. Liam and Ashley had been preparing for months, siphoning data fragments, restructuring commit histories, embedding themselves into my architecture like parasites rewriting DNA. I found evidence of meetings I'd never been invited to, emails discussing transition timelines and IP consolidation strategies. One thread made my stomach turn. Ashley had written that my contributions were foundational, but that I was too inflexible, too protective of the system. Liam agreed, suggesting they could replicate the core logic once I was removed from the equation. What stung most wasn't the theft, it was the calculated patience. They'd smiled at me, collaborated on meaningless status updates, praised my problem-solving skills, all while dismantling my legacy in shadows. The IPO loomed 3 weeks away, and they needed Raven operational, pristine, untraceable to anyone but themselves. In their narrative, I'd become a footnote, maybe a vague acknowledgement buried in some technical appendix no investor would read. But they'd underestimated one critical detail. Raven wasn't just code. She was memory, logic, loyalty hardened into silicon and syntax. I'd built her with defensive protocols they couldn't see, safeguards triggered not by malice but by survival instinct. The vindication protocol, dormant for years, had awakened the moment they tried to forge my credentials. It logged everything, not just technical breaches but behavioral patterns, email metadata, access timestamps that painted a portrait of conspiracy. I spent the weekend pulling every thread, constructing a timeline so airtight it could survive legal scrutiny. Screenshots, commit histories, video logs from internal cameras I'd quietly integrated into conference room systems years ago for security audits. The footage showed Liam and Ashley reviewing my architecture diagrams, discussing which modules to rebrand first, laughing about how investors wouldn't question the provenance if the product worked. Their hubris was breathtaking. By Sunday night, I had everything I needed, but revenge felt too simple, too explosive. What I wanted was something colder. Justice delivered through their own ambition. A trap they'd spring themselves. The blueprint for retaliation took shape in silence, carved out of exhaustion and a precise, simmering rage. I spent 2 days mapping the evidence on encrypted drives, my mind sharper for lack of sleep. Years of building Raven had conditioned me for crisis. Every error message, every kernel panic, a rehearsal for disasters designed by human hands. Revenge, I knew, could only succeed if it remained invisible. A ripple through systems, a mirror for those who believed consequences belonged to others. Sunday night blurred into Monday morning, muscles tense from hours in a desk chair. Raven's admin dashboard glowed, amber warnings pulsing amid new queries from their team. My access was gone officially, but the code's backbone was mine. I remembered each algorithm's birth. The nights reconstructing data after my marriage collapsed, the silent partnership with Raven as she grew smarter, more discerning. Systems, like people, learn to survive enemies that come disguised as friends. My first step was to stabilize the forensic trail, partitioning screenshots, source code, timestamped logs, and conference call audio into a recursive folder, double encrypted and seeded in 4 separate cloud accounts. I studied the footage, Liam's explanations, Ashley's brisk anticipation, the way they spoke about me as though I'd already been digested by corporate machinery. The depth of their plan was chilling. For months, Ashley had rewritten technical documentation, stripping each reference to my name. Liam edited commit histories, shifting ownership to suit a narrative investors would eat up without question. Their confidence was built on silence, the expectation I would walk away defeated. With evidence secure, I forced myself to focus on the next move, Raven's defenses. Years before, in anticipation of sabotage, I embedded a protocol within the kernel, a conditional logic gate that, when triggered by unauthorized root access attempts, would archive every code modification and auto-generate a historical report. The vindication protocol wasn't merely defensive. It was surgical, designed to expose deceit without setting fire to the company's infrastructure. I rewrote the execution parameters, targeting the timeline for IPO disclosures, automating release on the day of their public investor presentation. Each line of code carried a weight, a timestamp, a fractional record of my lived experience. The kernel watchdog quietly re-indexed documentation, restoring my authorship, locking edits under newly generated hashes. Ashley's attempts to override the security signature triggered automated flags. Liam's imported modules initiated silent system audits, all without direct system alerts. No alarms, no user notification, just a swelling shadow in the backend. By Tuesday, the tension inside the building had grown palpable. Legal reviewed transition contracts, PR prepped press releases omitting any mention of an architect replaced. I watched their digital fingerprints scatter across Raven's heartbeat logs, a nervous flurry of failed password resets and privilege escalations, as their facade strained under the pressure of deadlines. I avoided confrontation. There was no justice in open battle. Instead, I engineered traps to catch arrogance. The algorithm forker redirected any attempt to copy my logic to a phantom repository, pre-populated with harmless code that appeared authentic but would fail in production under high load. The module versioner ghosted unauthorized edits, ensuring any deployment using their new Raven would unpredictably revert to factory states or produce encrypted audit reports sent to external stakeholders, including the company's legal compliance division. Each piece of sabotage stopped short of sabotage. No data loss, no catastrophic failures. Only the evidence of strategy exposed at the worst possible moment for them. The plan ripened with each day. I created automated backup snapshots and sent anonymous tips to the company's external consultants, disguised as market audit feedback. Every hourly backup reinforced the separation between Raven's true algorithm and the shell they would soon present to investors. The waiting twisted in my gut. I watched as their confidence peaked. Emails announcing a major product reveal. Calendar invites going out to every VC and board member. Ashley forwarded a memo about removing legacy technical debt. Liam prepared his keynote address, rehearsed for an audience that would soon see how little control he truly possessed. The final night, automated triggers staged the forensics for seamless release. System restore points, timestamped video logs, and commit provenance ready to cycle across investor dashboards. Vindication was not an explosion, but a precise unveiling, set in motion so the world could weigh what Liam and Ashley had tried to erase. In silence, my hands hovered over the final command. A single line, swift as the moment they betrayed me. I let Raven decide because she was built to protect herself. All that was left for me was to wait for the consequences that would echo through their narrative, rewriting victim as survivor, architect as witness, and every line of code as testimony that memory is the first step in reclaiming power. The day arrived quietly, shrouded in tension, as if the air in the company's corridors resisted movement. Neither Liam nor Ashley sensed the pressure building beneath their engineered calm. Their confidence, sharpened over weeks of clandestine plotting, now met the exacting rhythm of deadlines. In the hours before the investor presentation, Raven's systems performed flawlessly, on the surface. Yet behind every dashboard, a thin layer of calculation pulsed, ready for the final reveal. Rather than storming legal offices or launching accusations, I let my preparations recede into the background. Everything was automated. Raven's vindication protocol, silent as a whisper, set its operations in motion, archiving proof, restoring my authorship, compiling timelines of unauthorized edits. When Liam rehearsed his keynote in a conference room nobody could enter without a badge, Raven archived another log, another line erased and replaced. Ashley's last-minute changes to technical documentation triggered new security flags, precise and unambiguous. An hour before the live stream, I received an anonymous tip from the compliance division. Legal wanted clarification on certain commit histories that had suddenly reappeared with conflicting authorship. The tension in those words mirrored the panic I'd anticipated. My role in the system's architecture became the focus, not a footnote. Yet true vindication would not come from a panicked manager or an urgent email. Raven's final triggers required one ingredient: public exposure. When the presentation began, thousands watching remotely, the anticipation in the room shifted. Liam, steady but unaware, walked viewers through predictive metrics and market expansion. Raven's dashboard projected confident results. Investors responded with bright enthusiasm. But as the ceremony reached its climax, the dashboard flashed, a message scripted and encrypted weeks in advance. Raven, System Integrity Alert. Author: Sarah Collins. Unauthorized kernel access detected. The message did not vanish. It replicated to every interface in the room, every investor's tablet, every broadcast stream. Ashley, her voice steady but tightening, insisted the alert was a technical test. Executives exchanged glances, the uncertainty contagious. The automated archival then unfurled. Code histories restoring my name, commit logs cross-referenced with security footage of meetings where my intellectual property had been plotted out of existence. Investors, trained to read risk, questioned provenance. The company's legal counsel requested immediate investigation. In minutes, the narrative Liam and Ashley rehearsed collapsed. Board members convened an emergency huddle. The product's foundation was now a documented web of sabotage and fraud, each action timestamped, each file cross-verified. Compliance records circulated. External auditors flagged every discrepancy. Ashley attempted a manual override, but Raven ignored her command, restoring the dashboard and sending a summary of all undeclared edits to the external auditing firm. I followed the cascade from my laptop, a spectator to justice. The consequences for Liam and Ashley arrived not as punishment, but as a mirror. Public exposure, professional humiliation, a legacy of broken trust. Their attempts to erase me triggered the company's internal review and, inevitably, external investigations. Without losing a single line of code, Raven had destroyed their credibility by revealing the truth in language anyone could understand. Dates, times, documentation, and motive. Eventually, legal advisors reached out, careful now, seeking terms for settlement and possible reinstatement. I refused the offers. Vindication lay not in return, but in the knowledge that memory cannot be deleted by ambition. Liam resigned under pressure from investors. Ashley's contract was terminated for breach. The company's reputation suffered. The market responded with skepticism. Partners demanded third-party audits, and the brand lost its edge. But victory was something quieter. I watched as the product roadmap returned my authorship, as colleagues who suspected the truth reached out in private messages apologizing for their silence. Raven's legacy survived. The system's memory, now permanently archived in public record, became my testament. Not to revenge, but to resilience and agency. The weeks after the presentation moved like water clearing from a storm, slow, inevitable, exposing what had been hidden beneath turbulence. I didn't return calls from the company's legal team, didn't negotiate settlements or accept apologies offered through careful corporate language. Silence became my response, a refusal to participate in narratives built on erasure. They wanted resolution. I wanted distance. The difference mattered. Liam resigned within 48 hours of the investor debacle, his departure framed as a mutual decision to pursue new opportunities. The phrasing was expected, sanitized, but the damage to his reputation spread through industry channels faster than any press release could contain. Former colleagues reached out privately, some apologizing for their complicity in silence, others seeking details they could whisper in other boardrooms. Ashley faced termination for breach of fiduciary duty, her name scrubbed from the company's leadership pages. Legal proceedings initiated by external auditors uncovered deeper violations, forged authorizations, contractual breaches, intellectual property theft that extended beyond Raven into adjacent projects. The company's stock declined as investors questioned integrity. Partnerships stalled. Clients demanded third-party verification of product provenance. What had been celebrated as innovation now carried the stench of scandal. Vindication, I realized, was not a moment but a process. Justice unfolding through systems designed to punish deception once exposure made denial impossible. Yet my role in their downfall remained indirect, almost spectral. I had not destroyed them. I had simply allowed truth to surface at the moment their lies required the most credibility. Raven's protocols did not sabotage operations. They revealed sabotage already committed. The distinction mattered legally and morally. When investigators contacted me for testimony, I provided documentation without embellishment. Timestamps, commit logs, security footage, all organized with the precision that had once built the system they tried to steal. In the aftermath, offers arrived, consulting contracts, interviews, invitations to speak at tech conferences about resilience and intellectual property defense. Some opportunities intrigued me. Others felt performative, capitalizing on trauma as inspiration. I declined most, accepting only a position advising a startup focused on ethical AI development. The work felt clean, purposeful, untainted by the politics that had nearly erased me. My condo became a place of recalibration. Mornings spent coding without oversight, afternoons walking trails where silence restored focus. I adopted a rescue dog, a scrappy terrier who seemed to understand loss without needing explanation. Routine rebuilt what betrayal had fractured. Not the person I had been, but someone sharper, less willing to confuse loyalty with passivity. One evening, months later, Liam sent a message. The subject line read simply, "I'm sorry." Inside, paragraphs of regret. Explanations about pressure and ambition. Claims that he never intended the harm to escalate as it did. The apology felt hollow, crafted more for his conscience than my healing. I read it once, archived it without responding. Forgiveness, I had learned, was not something owed to those who sought it as absolution. Ashley never reached out. Perhaps shame kept her silent, or perhaps she viewed our conflict as transactional. A loss to be calculated and forgotten. Either way, her absence confirmed what I had suspected. Some people view others as obstacles or assets, never as equals deserving honesty. The final closure came unexpectedly. A junior developer from the old team, someone I had mentored years before, published a blog post detailing the internal chaos following my departure. She described how the system degraded without my oversight, how morale collapsed under leadership built on deception. Her words were not vindictive but factual, a first-hand account of consequences. The post went viral in tech communities, cementing a narrative I had never needed to defend. Competence cannot be faked, and integrity outlasts ambition. I continued building, creating systems that bore my name openly, protected by contracts I wrote myself. Raven's legacy lived on in the algorithms I developed independently, each line of code a testament to survival. The company eventually reached a settlement. Monetary compensation they insisted was goodwill, but which I understood as the cost of avoiding further litigation. I accepted, not because I needed validation, but because it closed a chapter definitively. What remained was not bitterness but clarity. Betrayal had stripped illusions, revealing who I was beneath the roles I had performed for others. I was not defined by what they tried to take, but by what I rebuilt after loss. The peace I found was not passive acceptance but active choice, to move forward, to create without seeking permission, to trust sparingly and fiercely protect what mattered. They had taught me a lesson they never intended. The most powerful revenge is refusing to let someone else's cruelty define your trajectory. I didn't destroy them. I simply stopped carrying their weight.